Welcome one, welcome all. I am lucky enough to be joined by two of the very best. I got Stats here with me who will be here all NASCAR season. He has been grinding the Xfinity and the trucks as well already. The duels, the clash. We've already had a bunch of slates already for the racing front. And then I'm also joined by a man that you're quite familiar with, Big T, Tony, who is grateful enough to make us start at 9:38 actually. He was late. I will point that out. So we got a little bit of extra time to kind of settle in. But how are you doing, Tony? How's everything been? How excited are you for Daytona?
I don't appreciate getting thrown under the bus right out of the gate. There's snow outside. You come right after me, right out of the chute, saying I'm the reason we're late. Usually at least JSU makes excuses for me. You just come right after me. But yeah, it was fun. Honestly, yesterday I think we had a lot of Run Pure logos towards the top, and you always gotta like we always say at Daytona, you got to get a little lucky at the end and hope your guys don't crash when it comes down to it. Unfortunately, mine kind of crashed towards the end, and then I got stat changed too down a little bit after that. But we had a ton of logos up top, and the night before for trucks we did pretty good too. So
yep,
I have high expectations for today, and it's good because it's got to be the biggest prize of the year, right, for NASCAR. I never remember if they do a bigger one later in the year, but if not the biggest, it's definitely one of the biggest with all these prizes today.
Yeah, this is definitely the biggest contest for DFS purposes here. I think even FanDuel has 200K pool, and I think they 50K to first today. So there's a lot of money to be made. Stats, I saw that a lot of Run Pure Sports logos were up there yesterday. It was one of those races where my main team actually ran through clean. I actually had 6 of 6 not crash. I was absolutely shocked to see. I saw that your logo up there multiple times, especially when I was looking at the Clash, especially. You were always up there, kind of in first. You had a really good kind of core there. And then over the last couple of days, I've seen the logo as well from you. How's everything been, and how excited are you for today?
Dude, I'm pumped up, man. It's like football's over. NASCAR now for me. I can't believe a guy from Brooklyn, like I'm all into the NASCAR. Like Big T should be like the big NASCAR guy. And
getting thrown under the bus twice now today. I'd like to point that out.
But it's crazy, man. I actually did. I was on VSiN on Friday for a quick segment, and I'm like, and the guy was like, yeah, I grew up in North Carolina, but I'm not a big NASCAR guy. I'm like, dude, I grew up in Brooklyn, never watched NASCAR in my life, and now the last 7-8 years, I've just been just totally enthralled by it. And look, there's nothing better. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of people in here who've never played NASCAR, never watched NASCAR. They're just going to start getting into it. And it's odd because probably the biggest race of the year happens on their first big race, like the first actual race of the year in NASCAR. It's their Super Bowl. But unlike, like, if you're a football fan, like or if you're not a football fan, the Super Bowl as a game is just another football game. But Daytona is not just another race. It's a unique race where even if you're not a fan, it's kind of exciting to watch because I think you guys kind of alluded to the fact that you're going to get wrecks because these guys are driving bumper to bumper at 200 miles per hour on a 2.5 mile track. And inevitably, especially when things get towards the end and guys are trying to make moves, they're usually running in single file, maybe two lanes of single file. They start getting into the third, 3 wide, and that's it. All hell breaks loose. You saw that last night with Xfinity, and we are assured that that's going to happen again here. So when you're running 10th, 12th, you're looking at your drivers today, and they're 12th with 10 laps to go. You're right in the thick of it because 12th, like I said, you're running 2x2. You're really only 6 spots out. You go 12th to 4th to 12th to 6th. Like it's going to move back and forth, and one little wreck, and all of a sudden you're winning. So that's what makes it exciting. That's what makes the odds market. So you're getting, this is if you could hit the winner on this race in the betting markets, it's usually a pretty nice payday because you really can't lock down a favorite. There's no plus 300 favorites at Daytona. So exciting race, a lot of fun, money to be won. And I'm ready to get this season going, bud.
Absolutely. You should be noted for the duels, Bubba Wallace was hit at plus 850 to get the week started off right with the bets there. I know that when you only have 5 races, basically, it's really nice to get at least one plus 850 winner rate, 8.5 to 1. So that was actually a perfect way to start out the betting weekend here, Stats. And I know that you'll have some bets for this one. Again, it's Daytona. There's a little bit of long shots to be had. Tony, got to go back to you here because you had a very good set of lineups last night in Xfinity. You were very close. It shouldn't be dismissed. I know the stat correction bumped you down a little bit later on, but you were in the top 5 there toward the end of the race, and it just shows just Daytona. You never want to count your winnings until until the checkered flag is out, and 20 minutes later the stat corrections are out if they end on a wreck, right?
Yeah, and I had a bunch of, like Stats said, I've met a bunch of people this year through like the basketball stuff, and a bunch of them were playing NASCAR for the first time yesterday, and they're like watching their lineups every lap, and I'm like, guys, we're looking good, but I'm trust me, it is not going to matter until there's 2-3 laps left, 1 lap left sometimes, and it's fun though. It's a fun sweat. You just have to know going in. It's like showdown on steroids, even for football fans, the analogy. Like, you can go from up everything to down everything in one turn, and that's what makes it fun, honestly. And the strategies that we're going to talk about during the show will give you a chance, but it does come down to luck at the end of it. Make no mistake about it. We don't know who's going to crash at the end. You got to get lucky, but it is a fun sweat because sometimes it goes the other way too, where I think I had one last year or the year before where I won like 50 or 100K because I got lucky at the end where I was dead the whole race. I never had a chance. And then like 4 straight wrecks went my way and I won everything. So don't forget about when it goes the other way too, when it goes good. We always remember when it goes bad. It goes good just as many times. And the strategies that we're going to talk about, everyone kind of knows now to play guys from the back. But you can mix in other strategies where maybe you throw a guy in the top 10 in your rules. And this is where Stats is the best of anybody. There's certain things he can do to kind of get different in between the crack. Because it's not just as easy as, okay, go throw 6 guys in the back, 25 back, and you could probably make money most of the time doing that, but you're not going to win the 500K today doing that more than likely. You're going to have to filter in a little bit of strategy with some of these guys up front. How many do you play? Don't play too many. All the different stuff that makes it awesome. I love the sweat, honestly. It's funner when it goes your way, but it's simple strategies. And I honestly like the starting order today too, which we'll get into. But there's some guys in each like phase of the race, each 10 drivers, that I think you could at least make a case for. That's not always the case. There is some chalk in the back like always, but there's pivots. I think it's a good race, and it's a perfect time for 500K because, like Rubio said, there's a lot of combinations of these teams. I had a bunch of uniques yesterday. You can have uniques in this stuff pretty easy while playing good plays, and it's 500K for first place. So you can't – without football, you're not getting 500K for first place very often. 200K on FanDuel too, Rubio said. So just awesome stuff. I can't wait till today.
200K total on FanDuel. There's still
200K
little brother. Yeah,
still good though for FanDuel.
Still good. I've actually been loving the FanDuel streets for the last few months. But and there's
you guys just jerk each other to our rival, whatever you call it, our rival company.
Because all the smart people are on DK, Tony. That's why, right? Like a lot of the sharps are on DK. But in all seriousness, though, there's also some more content to plug real quick. NBA All-Star Game. There was a lot of edge with the Rising Stars game. Tony, I got 5th in the main contest, on the Rising Stars game.
There you go.
There's a ton of edge with that. Mangone put up a playbook for the Rising Stars. I imagine he'll put one up for the All-Star game as well. Lots of edge with these new kind of funky formats that you see in shortened games. We'll have that covered here at Run Pure Sports. RPS 15% off your first.
You're just slighting me again. I got in there and worked my ass off on my rankings and stuff. You talk about Mangone, you don't give me any credit for all my extra like rankings and different things I went in there and did. Cleaned up Mangone's. His sheet was all jacked up. There was
I gotta admit,
in every corner. I had to clean it up for him. I was the in between man and got no credit again. I'm coming for you today, Rick.
Wait, hold on, Tony. Tony did a great job. I got to put that out. He had the rankings up. He cleaned it up. And Mangone kind of put in the effort, right? He definitely put in some effort, but he still had like Glock's name on there, JVC's name on there.
Like when you build a house, he put the base on it for sure. He got us started. He got us in the right direction.
I remember opening up the tab and I saw, AP, Glock, and JVC. I'm like, they're not all playing the All-Star game. There's no way. Then I saw you cleaned it up, made sure that, everyone who was playing on it and stuff. And then the core plays as well. And then you were in the chat giving away your exposures too, which is always nice. Stats, I'm going to go to you here because I just want to know what your rules are for a race like today. Obviously, with Daytona, most people, if you haven't played NASCAR DFS before, you'll want to stack from the back. You don't want too many guys in the top 20, but more specifically, I want to hear what you have for this one because I did notice for Xfinity and trucks, what you are different with than Tony and I is you do get a little bit of these guys in the top 10, not a ton, right? But you do it to get a little bit unique, I imagine, and make sure that if they go off for 55 fantasy points, which is kind of the benchmark, that you have a chance to have the winner in the end all be all. What are you doing today, Stats?
Yeah, for those two races, for the truck race and Xfinity, I did use a little bit more guys who were starting, let's say, top 10 or top 15, which a lot of people try to fade. But in those two races, I didn't mind it. In this race here, I'm going to be less. I'll have a little bit less of that strategy. So I think for most people here, you're going to want to be fading at least the top 10. We'll get into specific drivers, even top 15. You're looking at your lineup really should have probably 4 drivers 25th or worse as far as starting position goes. That's a very typical range as to where we see the Daytona 500 or either both races at Daytona, really, where you're going to see finishes. We haven't had a top 10. We haven't had a driver finish in the top 6 who started in the top 10 since 2022 with Cindric and Blaney. Cindric started 5th and won that race, and Blaney started 7th and came in 4th, and both of them finished in the top 6. But, I mean, it is just very typical, very rare to get anyone in the top 15, let alone the top 10. Like I said, in 2023, it was the Pepsi 400, I think. Buescher and Keselowski were 11th and 12th. So there's a lot of races in between there that I didn't mention, and most of those are drivers in 25th or worse starting position, and even more so 30th or worse. So we're really focusing on the back. This is all about place differential. And part of the reason is I think someone asked about DOMs in the chat. I think I saw that kind of scroll by earlier. It's very difficult to dominate for an extended period of time at Daytona because of what we were talking about earlier, where these drivers, you can't get too far out ahead. If you actually do get far out ahead of the pack, you will get reined in and you will lose speed. You get faster by having these cars drive in a line bumper to bumper, and those lines will come quick. So if you get out by yourself, if you have a bad pit stop or a pit sequence where you're out there by yourself, you're coming back on the track with no other cars to help you, you will see those drivers and those cars run extremely slow. So no one gets out too far out in front in this race. Therefore, dominating for extended periods of time becomes really difficult. So DOM points, we don't really look at. This is a place differential type of race.
Yeah, you're not kidding. And I think that was very impressive as someone who fades Austin Hill every super speedway with him having the top 5 car. His comments post-race where he had too good of a car yesterday in that Xfinity race where he was able to he just had to make sure he didn't get out too far, and he had the speed to stay in front of anyone. Obviously, he had some fluid issue where he was leaking fluid, burning up in the engine or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, you see Jesse Love, who was his teammate, won the race. And you mentioned this last year because that's why I brought it up. Love and Hill teammates, right? They were clearly the 2 best cars all night. In my opinion. And then all of a sudden you have situations where you kind of like stacking teammates in this format. It's not something that's imperative, but if you're running a handful of lineups and stuff, you might want, let's just say, for example, guys in the same team, right? Like, for example, Hendrick, we're not going to be playing Byron starting 5th or whatever, but if you went further back, Larson and Bowman, right? What are the chances they are connected there at the end? Bowman's pushing Larson toward a win. You're looking at a top 5 chance for both drivers, right? They're both good PD plays by themselves, but also together as a team, they might be connected, trying to push each other toward the checkered flag there. That is something that you mentioned last year. Again, it's really hard to make rules like that, right? If you're doing that in Sabre, or, if you're doing that in any optimizer, but it is something to kind of note that if you are building, like hand building a few teams and stuff, that stacking those teams is something that can be very effective and very good in kind of like a short scope, I think. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do starting position today. So we're going to be going from 1 through 10, right? And you'll be a very short segment on the 1 through 10, right? I don't think any of us are playing any of these guys. That's just the reality of it. Why do you not play any of these guys? Well, let's be honest here, right? Stats just went over the whole spiel too about talking about how really no one inside the top 12 or inside the top 10 has been optimal at super speedways lately. There's also the reasoning of just fantasy point scoring. there's no Dom points to be had here, right? Like, let's be honest. You're not going to rack up fastest laps being in first. You're not going to get a significant amount of laps led that are going to contribute to you being in the winning lineup, right? If Briscoe went out and led 50 laps, there's still a high chance that he's not even going to be one of the top 6 scorers because he is not going to have any place differential and upside at all. 55 points is the barometer. Briscoe will probably miss out on 55 points if we just pull up the SaberSim thing. Like, all 95% of the time, right? That's just not worth it at all for me. I think it's even lower than that. None of these guys are on my radar here inside the top 10. That goes from Logano up to Briscoe. Stats, I'm going to go to you here first just to reiterate what you said. Are you the same way?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I think just a couple of guys to talk about, only because they'll get a little bit of love here, is, Denny Hamlin's going to get some play and he starts at 8. I think this is good opportunity to we talked about, we really don't want to play a lot of these guys in the top 10. Let some other people play them. People are going to try to fill out salary. That's one thing we didn't talk about. Salary, your min salary can literally be anything. Here, you don't need to fill out the entire salary. Those that do are going to wind up putting in someone like Hamlin at 10K and go on name recognition alone. So we might get a little bit of leverage here on the field with a Denny. Hasn't been great as of recent history here anyway. And then Logano will probably get maybe even slightly more interest in the market, maybe up in the teens for Logano, who's starting 10th. And same reasons here. I love Joey at the super speedways. Has a shot to win this race. I think anytime you talk about teams, he's on a team of drivers who do perform really well on these super speedway type of tracks. But again, starting 10th, we're just going to play the odds here. And I think those are two drivers that'll get a little bit of attention. And I think we can maybe leverage ourselves against those guys. So not guys that you want to take. If you wanted to go crazy and take someone in the top 10, I don't really know who that would be. It would really just be kind of a luck. Maybe a Reddick, who I'll talk about him when we talk about the betting. I think there's a little bit of value there on Reddick, but really you want to kind of avoid those guys. And if you are going to take one of these guys, I wouldn't take one that everyone else is taking, like Logano or Hamlin.
Yep, I agree there. Tony, you have all your stuff up. You were a go-getter this morning. It was 6:30 in the morning. All of a sudden, you pinged the chat. You said, all my NASCAR stuff is up. I'll see you at the show at 9:30, right? You were working hard this morning. I look inside the top 10 for you here. It's kind of more of the same, right? But you do have a couple guys who I think you're interested in inside the top 10. That would be Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain a little bit. What's your interest level on those two guys?
Yeah, so it's going to come down to what you're playing, though. Like, if you're playing 1 to 3 teams, even like 20 teams, like, I'm not going to play these guys. But if you're 150 and mainly the 500K to first on DraftKings, I don't think it's the worst to fill. I do agree with what Stat said, though. These guys are going to be higher owned than people think just because of name value. And so there is a ton of casuals still that don't know the strategies at all of it. So they'll still play them more. But I at least want some of Hamlin and Chastain. And by some, I mean literally like 5%. I mean, just a sprinkle because I could see them winning and being optimal. Do I think it happens a lot? Probably not. And I definitely have a rule of which I also put on the playbook, some of the rules. I know Stats and Rubio will clean up their stuff too on there. But I put a few rules, like it says 0 to like 1 max for sure of top 20. Like, and I agree with Stats too. 4 back of 25 for sure, at least 4 of those guys. So as long as you have a rule in your builder, if you're using SaberSim, kind of like Rubio's messing with right now, SaberSim, or whatever you use, just set a rule that says 0 to 1, anyone starting in the top 20. And then just sprinkle a few of these guys. But Hamlin and Chastain are for sure my guys up top. And again, are they going to be on my main team? No, definitely not. But just a little sprinkle in my 150, nothing crazy. Just because they're good drivers, they could easily win. But I don't like them if that summarizes for people.
No, it summarizes it rather well, and that is something that, yes, whatever optimizer you want to use or anything like that, I use SaberSim. Here's how I set up a rule that I don't want more than one, probably inside the top 15 total for me today. I think maybe you can make the case, as Stats was saying, for some of these guys here as we get a little bit into the teens. You have some talented racers like Blaney, Elliott, Christopher Bell starting 20th and stuff. But there is some guys maybe in the teens that you can make the case for, but especially in the top, I would say the top 14. I definitely don't want more than one driver in any lineup that I do.
Let me jump in for a second, Rubio, just on that note. You know, if you work it backwards, like I was saying, and you take the 4 guys, let's say 25th or higher, and then just let it go, like already you only have 2 other spots remaining. So it's going to be real difficult to get, especially with the projections that aren't going to be great on these guys in the top 10. If you're running, this is for if you're running 150, you know, and then you can just kind of spot check it, like just run it that way instead of running it the same way like a lot of people are going to do, which is kind of maybe one max out of the top 15 or anything like that. You're going to sort of get there anyway, and then spot check it and go, all right, well, I got 10% of Denny Hamlin or whatever, you know, after I ran it. Let me just click the Denny Hamlin lock button and see how many other drivers I have with him. And if you're getting too many, then go ahead and tweak it a little bit. And I also agree with T here. If you are playing 150, definitely want to sprinkle in a couple of those guys who are in that top 10, but certainly not 20 max builds or less. I think you want to kind of avoid those guys.
That's a good point too. I mean, if you already have 4 guys 25th and back, if you already set that rule up, right? Like that could be just one rule that you kind of set up. Make sure you have that, and all of a sudden you don't really.
The rules definitely overlap each other for sure. That's why Stats is the best at this. I do it a lot of times too, where I'll put a lot of stuff in, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm literally putting 2 things for no reason. It already takes care of itself.
My rules in general go from 0 to 8 down to 1. After I'm like, I need this rule. In general, with DFS, you want to have as few rules as you can. You wind up screwing things up more than you think.
Yeah.
I get myself all twisted into a pretzel with some of the rules, and I wind up just going back to very basics. But you definitely want at least one of those rules in for a race like this. And NASCAR, most weekends, you're going to have one rule in there at least.
I do think the interesting part with groups and rules with this stuff too is sometimes you group yourself out of the winner.
Yeah.
But there has been times too where I've grouped myself into the winner just randomly because I'll do like whatever it is. Give me one driver between 15 and 23. I want one in there. And just like and in Showdown, it's done it to me too, where I do some stupid rule that somehow groups me into the winner because of it. But it goes both ways like everything. You can group yourself out of the winner too, where just somehow 6 guys in the back are somehow the winner or whatever the case.
Well, I see you do it. You must have done that last night because your distribution, you had a lot of them I'm like, no matter what's happening, I kept looking at it. I'm like, no matter what's going on here, Big T is just keeping like, he's got like 20 winning lineups in the top 100 right now.
Yeah. I definitely did so well, and honestly, I got a little lucky because you know how I am. I go with hunches. VIP went in there at the end and was talking about how Austin was going to crash because he won the last 4 times or whatever, just whatever nonsense. And I'm like, he's right. He's not going to make it. So I pulled. I had like 40%, and I pulled him out of my pool at literally the last second, and then it rejammed it, and it gave me that whole like one section, and it worked out great because of it.
Yeah, as soon as he was out, I'm like, T didn't use him. I'm like, because he can't, you can't knock him out of the top 100 right now.
Yeah, and then until Zilsich or whatever his name is crashed, that hurt me. But besides that,
yeah, that was the crash that I knew shook up the leaderboard the most. As the one he
everybody around here was so heavy there too. I mean, he was high owned, but we were even heavier owned.
Oh yeah. Heavy on the good plays as usual. I don't have anything to add to the top 10. I think I'm going to X out every one of these guys except for Hamilton, Chastain, and Logano, and I'm just looking for barely a splash. Right? You can see I got 109 entries total. You'd probably see a couple of splash, maybe in the 25, maybe in the $4.
How do you have 109? How did you come up with that number?
I do the autofill feature on SaberSim, so I probably have 50 in the 25, 20 max contest a couple times there.
I thought you meant you had just 109 in the milli.
No, not completely random. I might get it up there to 60.
I know AP always has done stuff like that where he'll just be like, "Oh, I got 39 teams in the 20," and I'm always like, "How'd you come up with that number?"
And the 25 is a little rich for my blood, man.
It is. It's a rich price point for sure.
So, usually coincides with the balance in the account at the time.
No doubt.
We got a little bit of 11 through 20 to talk about here. Stats, you mentioned Tyler Reddick, who you said you might get a little bit of love in the betting market. Go ahead and talk about that, and we'll also group it in at the end. 11 through 20, though, overall, who are you interested in this range?
Yeah, I mean, with Reddick, look, historically hasn't been great at super speedways, but did get a win at Talladega. I just feel like he's kind of trending the right way, and for the price, I'm seeing 3,300 plus 3,300 on Reddick. It's not a guy I necessarily think's going to win. We've already talked about there's a lot of luck involved here. So I'll take a shot. I think basically you're getting built into that price the fact that he has not been very successful at the super speedway. So it's my favorite price on the board. Not necessarily my favorite to win the race, but I thought it was the best value out there at the at plus 3,300. I don't know. I haven't looked at it this morning, but I know some of the offshore books were half of that, some of the sharper books. So if you're looking at some top down betting, that's another thing to look at on Reddick. He was like 1,600, I think, offshore at some of the sharper books. So something to keep an eye on as far as from a DFS perspective. Yeah, I mean, you can't get too excited. Even in this range here, there's not too many of the guys I like. Like I said, I think Reddick can win the race, so I'm fine having him in your field, in your pool. You've got LaJoy, Allmendinger, pretty good at these as well. But I'm not going to get too much there. I think we can open it up a little bit where Tony was talking about maybe just a strict total fade of the top 10 outside of those couple of drivers. Maybe you could open it up now to get yourself one of these guys in the next in the top 15 as well. You've got Gilliland and Dillon, and then of course Blaney, who's the favorite in this race, is at 16. I guess we'll get to him in the next segment. But you've got kind of mediocre guys here in the middle, and not necessarily a range that I'm looking to get all too heavy on at this price or at this start position.
So, I mean, did you like Blaney and stuff? Because we can lump in 16 through 20.
Yeah, if you want to throw – well, the thing is look, Blaney's success at the super speedways, I mean, we all know about that. Yeah. Great team as well. What I don't like is the way the betting market is moving on him. So he went from plus 1,000, now he's plus 1,300, plus 1,400. So to me, I'll take that move as a sign that maybe some of the sharper guys out there don't like, for whatever reason or another, don't like Blaney. Use the betting markets, guys, as well, especially in the future here, where it's a little bit more predictable than maybe Daytona is. But pay attention to the betting markets, and if there's steam moves, if there's moves going one way or another. The fact that people are getting off of Blaney, I think is interesting. One, he's probably one of the best super speedway racers in this race today. So that's giving me some pause, and it might want to get me a little bit under the market on Blaney.
Yep, no doubt. Their stats. We also had a comment earlier, and I'm finally catching up to it. As someone said that DraftKings is doing a top 10 parlay boost. Then I went into the odds for the top 10, and it's brutal, man. There's like 20 dudes who are plus 110 or worse in terms of odds. 20 guys. And there's like a half dozen that are minus 200 or worse. 7 guys who are minus 200 or worse. So it's like I would probably just jam a couple guys from the back because it's a parlay boost. Like Justin Haley has like plus 220 for a top 10. I actually really like that. You also have guys like SVG, but it's one of those things where it's not going to be very optimal, and they make you do 3 legs. So that boost might be one that we love DraftKings here, but I don't think it's plus EV, no matter how you slice it this week. Tony, 11 through 20 here, like you said, you have all your content on the site. If you guys want access to that content, RPS 15% off your first purchase here. Tony has his rankings, his value the value formula that you had to kind of deviate, like who's the best player on the slate. Like Alex Bowman has the clear number 1 value thing in his range, which obviously makes a little bit of sense starting 38th. And you also just have Blaney, who has a value of number 1 on your list and also a very high ranking from you. What's your take here on 11 through 20?
Yeah, and this is kind of where some of the rules I put in, just because I definitely want at least one guy in this range. So this is one rule that I'll definitely keep, just because I like a lot of guys in this range. And yeah, I don't want more than one probably in this range, but I do want one just because you got big name drivers. Even I'm a little lower. Reddick is in that same bucket as the first ones for me, where it's Hamlin, Chastain, Logano, Reddick, where it's more of a sprinkle, just like 5%. But once you get down to Blaney and Chase and these guys, I'm more willing to go up to I'll still be below field. So if Blaney's 20% and Chase is 20, I'll still be under that for sure. But I do think I want a decent amount of these guys in my 150. Blaney, Chase. I wanted to ask stats too. What do you think the sharpest win odds, nothing else, just win odds for NASCAR? Where should people look to see those?
Yeah, I like if you're looking offshore, look at Bet Online. They're one of the sharper books. Pinnacle, you can't really get any.
I always look Pinnacle and they don't have them.
They don't have it. Yeah, you can't get NASCAR, but I always check out BOL. The the one good thing, like if you're looking at the books here, some of the books here actually offer better price. Like you're going to get, on the whole, you'll actually get better pricing than Bet Online. So it's one of the few sports where it's advantageous to have some of these legal U.S. sports books.
Yeah, and I like it too. Where some of the sports like golf do, some of the like niche sports, I love to look at the sharp books for price and then just find the best price other places where we could go. And it works out a ton. Like if you're doing win odds in golf, I mean, you could have a guy that's 40-1 in a sharp book or something. You can probably find 100-1 if you look hard enough. Obviously not every time, but some of the odds just vary so much. But back to this range, we're going to what, 20? Blaney and Chase are definitely the two guys in this range for me, and they're the two that are going to get the most ownership, though. Not going to be more than likely on my main team, but I will have more in the 10 to 20% range for me than the 5% range. And then Christopher Bell, I'm not huge on, but I am leaving him in my pool too. Probably about a 5%er as well. And then Algier too, a little sprinkle of him in 19.
Yeah, Allgaier you got there as well. And that start 19th, he raced his way in on the duels too, which is very, very cool to see. He was, obviously a threat in the Xfinity race all day yesterday. Stats, I know that you bet Allgaier there at 12-1. After Austin Hill went down, I was like, man, you might be cooking with a little bit of fire there. But obviously, Allgaier did not really have the juice there. Just Jesse Love in the RCR was just really good. But there's a guy who got some action in Saturday, Thursday as well. So hope he raced the 3 of the 4 days here. That's pretty impressive. I look at this range here, and you guys already talked about it and stuff. These ownerships right now are not indicative of what I'm going to do. I'm just kind of showcasing what Sabre has with their contest sims. This is nothing that I'm going to be set on. But look, there's a reason why guys like Chase Elliott are popping a little bit. Good win odds, for the price range, right? He also has a little bit of upside with that PD range too. It's what Tony said. He's 11-1 odds, right? He's going to be a good play. Same thing about Blaney too, whose odds are dipping a little bit, with stats mentioning that. But those are guys who are going to be threats to win the race and can come from far enough back to where if they are in the top 5, they are going to be a very high likelihood that they're going to be in the winner. So I don't hate what you said, Tony, about making sure that you have one of these guys, right? And that's an aggressive play, but it's one of those where, look, every time I pull it up, every time I'm playing guys 30th and back, I always feel like, oh man, I have a really good chance to min cash, but I don't really have that upside to be in the winner. If you really want that upside to be in the winner, capturing some of these big names, who, guys who are really good at super speedways and stuff, is a way to do that. Austin Dillon,
16 to 25 or so, I would say. You got a lot of really good win equity in that range to get at least one guy. At least that's the way I look at it, where you might not have the place differential upside, but yep. There's a decent chance somebody in this range wins this race. A very good chance.
Yeah, no kidding there too. You just look at it, up and down. Like Austin Dillon, obviously winning this race before in the past. He also has another top 3.
McDowell won it too, right? Or no?
McDowell, yeah. He's in new equipment though now. You got it. So Gilliland's in the McDowell car. I don't, equipment to me doesn't matter as much here at Daytona.
Sometimes it helps you when it's not as good.
Well, that's true too. It helps you be patient and kind of stay. There's 2 things at Daytona. You want to be way out in front, or, as I said, you can't get way out in front. But if you're in front, less chance of getting involved in the wreck. Or if you're way back, hopefully you could avoid it. It's those guys sitting in the middle that when those wrecks happen, everyone from 10 through 20 just gets wiped out.
Yeah,
no doubt. And Charles, this is a good question here. And again, right, like it's one of those things where if you haven't played NASCAR DFS, like sometimes this stuff can be foreign, right? Or just a little bit in terms of just scoring. To put it in perspective, if your guy leads the race, usually he's one of the best plays on any slate, on any track, really, right? Because he's going to get, finishing, a high finishing position most likely. He's going to get a lot of laps led, a lot of fastest laps. Here, that doesn't matter. All that matters is basically getting that car across the finish line. What that does, you see 12, 15, 20 cars even, maybe not even finish the race. And it is worth noting that if you're starting 35th and you finish 18th, you're scoring higher than a guy who starts 19th and finishes 10th, because that is the place differential at play there. The place differential scoring is so huge in this race, and with so minimal, dominator points is what we call them. It's really just all about getting those place differential plays here, especially at a track like Daytona. You can move up from 40th to 20th in a couple laps. As long as you get a good steam there, you can make a move and all that. It is zero worry. It's such a long race anyway that you're going to have any factor of these guys like not being able to move up who have speed. And we're going to get to those guys later on. You have a bunch of guys like Keselowski, Bowman. You can even throw Truex in there, but like Gregson, Stenhouse, a former winner and stuff. You have a bunch of guys starting in the back who have the talent to move through that we'll get to in a bit. Leroy, you asked a good question here. Like, any rules about playing drivers next to each other? This race is 500 miles long. The chances that these guys even are side by side at any point with the guy who starts next to them are very slim, basically. Do not worry about that. They're going to be going half throttle for half the race anyway, right? So it's not going to be a worry until the end. And by then that you'll have a guy who started 20th be 10th and the guy who started 19th be 28th. All right. So zero worry on that regard here. All right.
This last point too, I wanted to answer this dude's, but so everyone always stacks from the back. Everyone pretty much knows now, at least people that pay attention. They always say this because we get this in Discord too when it comes up. What if there's no wrecks? What if this and that? What if this is the year there's no wrecks? Well, we'll probably lose because we're playing a lot of guys from the back, but also those guys can still get up front anyways. If it's a clean race, you got a bunch of good drivers that Rubio was just naming in the back. But I mean, you're only building DFS lineups for any sport off your upside and your strategy. You're not playing for the what if there's always racks. And if there somehow isn't, then we'll probably lose. But you just never know. And people always build that way. Like they said at the beginning of this show, people still will play these big names and people will still use all their salary just because that's what they do. When they get to the last spot and they can afford Hamlin or a guy in the 30s, they'll play Hamlin and they'll play these guys at the top. So I just wouldn't worry about that. Just go with the strategy. And it's fun. It's a fun strategy just because you got all the place differential upside and all the down. Like when you play Hamlin and he crashes and he finishes 40th and you see that big negative number on your thing every time, it's painful. It's much better to just sit in the back and climb up as the race goes.
Yeah, and I'll just further kind of hammer down this point. If there is no wrecks, well, Keselowski would be a lock. Bowman would be a lock. Truex would be a lock. These guys bring the back would be locks because they'd keep it clean. They'd get the most place differential points and stuff. Again, it's a lot of luck. Don't get me wrong.
It used to be, too, there was a lot of, like, dumpsters, like tractors in the back. Now there's a lot of good equipment. Like, there used to be 7 or 8 total garbage cars in the back where you could do a different – there's good guys back there now. I mean, how many cars are tank cars now? A couple? Tops?
None. No, you can maybe make the case for Helio, who we'll talk about a little bit later on. But because I'm kind of curious on your take on that stats too, because like I'm very kind of torn on what to do with him starting at 41st. But he's a guy who could keep it clean, right? Like Joey Gase yesterday, I played my Xfinity main team because I knew Gase would just stay out of the mud and just wait until the end to move up with some wrecks and stuff. And you're gonna have some guys like that, but not really at this level. Like, where I think everyone is just racing for the win and everyone has a chance. I mean, in the end, all be all the worst odds today is Cody Ware at 150 to 1. Those odds are usually 500 to 1, just for perspective. Let's get a move on here, 20 through 29. So actually, we're going to do 21 through 30 here. You can maybe add Christopher Bell if you want to talk about him as well. I didn't know if you overlapped or not. This is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. You got a bunch of names here, stats. You got Bell, you got Busch, you got Larson, Gibbs, McDowell, a former winner here. Priest could be a little bit popular too. Josh Berry starting 29th. Cole Custer, who has a little bit of talent as well. This is a very interesting range. This is where you're going to start to see a lot of your ownership kind of arise. And you were mentioning 25th and back. Well, man, you got like 4 big names right here. And if you want to add in Bell, like Bell, Busch, Larson, Gibbs, like that's a lot of big names too. The former winner McDowell starting 25th. What are you doing with these guys here, stats?
Yeah, I think this is where you start to get some ownership. Yeah, I mean, I just threw the 25 number out there because that's typically where you go. But you're right. We're going to probably want to maybe get some of these guys here in this range. With Kyle Busch, look, Kyle Busch is one of the favorites in this race. He's now, what are the odds on him now? He's at 1,200. He's actually So his price is now shorter than Blaney. All right. So just take that into consideration and where he's starting from. So I think you're going to have to, you got to have some Kyle Busch. Last year, I think there'll be a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth coming off of last year. Those who played NASCAR with Kyle Busch, not the best of seasons for him, but I think you have to like him here. And maybe, depending on where the ownership falls here, I think he might be undervalued. If where's Sabre have him at? I was thinking they're looking at maybe like 16 to 20, something like that. 20,
yeah, so
20%.
For Kyle Busch, they have 28 right now, which actually
28. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. I do think it might be a little bit high, but there was a lot of clicks yesterday, just in over the weekend. Like Justin Allgaier was 11% and stuff. Some of these bigger names and stuff, especially Kyle Busch, who's been in the sport forever, have been rising up in ownership.
Yeah, because I was seeing some projections a lot lower than that, but I think the 28. I think you're correct. I think that's probably where he's going to be. So I don't. You definitely don't want to sleep here on Kyle Busch. You've got Larson, who's obviously the best driver on the planet, starting in the 22nd spot. So again, you're going to want to have Larson in the mix. So maybe we want to extend this, now that I'm looking at it, maybe we want to extend this to 4 drivers in the 20th or lower, and you throw Christopher Bell in there. Maybe I'll just do it with Busch, and I'll start at 21, because then in this next group, you got the Herbst and SVG and that group, where we're probably not going to want to take too many of those guys. So maybe we just extend it a little bit, just to kind of piggyback on what you guys were talking about earlier. And you were looking at one of the comments. Someone had said, aren't we just kind of looking at finish position? Well, that's true. I mean, if you can figure out who's going to finish in the top 10, you're basically going to have to come top 10 or thereabouts, unless you get a driver starting 37, 38. They can finish maybe, 11, 12, 13, something like that, depending on how the rest of the race shakes out. But when we were talking about that previous group with the Elliott and Blaney and those guys, they're going to have to win the race. I mean, they're going to have to win the race, or at worst, maybe a second place. And that's the drivers that I was talking about earlier back in 2022, when we had 2 guys in the top 10, starting in the top 10, finish in the top 6. They finished 1-2 in the race. So it's going to take something like that in order to get there. So yes, of course, finish position means a lot, but the further back you start, the weaker your finish position has to be in order to hit the nuts lineup. So that's why we like to get as many guys starting as far back as possible.
Yep, without a doubt. And, we can go to branch into those 25 through 30, because you mentioned, McDowell, SVG. I really wanted your opinion on SVG. SVG is actually my favorite driver, Shane Van Gisbergen, for those who don't know.
He would be your favorite driver.
Yeah, I like a guy who's coming in.
Surprising thing you've ever said.
I like a guy who comes in and wrecks shit up in a road course and just kicks ass right away. And I think he's actually learning these ovals a lot better than I thought he would.
He's learning these ovals.
He is he's the best road course racer here. But also it's one of those things where I automatically faded in the Clash, because I was he's starting way too high and stuff. And sure enough, he's in the winner. I think SVG ended up beating out, he might not have been in the winner, but he still finished inside the top 10 during the Clash, which was just impressive. Yep. What are you doing with SVG today? And
there only 18 drivers in it. What, he finished 10th at 18?
23, and he had to qualify for it, right? That's the big thing too, I think, right? So stats, give me your take of 25 and down, but also specifically a guy like SVG who has been staying out of the mud in these super speedways.
Yeah, I mean, we know the talent when he's on a road course. I mean, there's nobody better, right? And you're right. I think he is improving here, and he ran pretty decently last year at Talladega on that super speedway. So I think he's going to be under-owned. I agree with you. We're not going to go crazy here. We're not going to have 30% ownership, but I think he's going to be probably 10% owned. So if you're sitting at 15 to 20% ownership on SVG, I've got no problem with it at that 26th starting position. Easily, just about anyone obviously can finish top 5 here, but I think a guy who's got a tremendous amount of talent in other aspects of racing has shown improvement. I like SVG. I would be long SVG here and be over the market. So I would agree with you there. I think we touched on McDowell earlier, who was a previous winner. Again, equipment-wise, step down. Do we care about that? Probably not. He's now with Spire, and Spire looked pretty good on super speedway. So I think actually I like guys who have the ability not to wreck, or at least have shown signs in the past that they are pretty good at avoiding wrecks. Sometimes you just can't avoid them here at Daytona, but McDowell is one of those guys. So I think we can get overweight guys like McDowell, SVG. You've got, where are we going down to, like 30th here?
Yeah, 30th.
And you've got well, let me skip down to like a Cody Ware, who, I mean, you're going to use all these guys in 150 builds, no doubt, even though Ware's not going to get a ton of ownership, but I think he's sneaky down here. Not going to get owned. Again, low, the price is 5,200. You're going to get a lot of people here who just, even if mentally they want to get, they know that they could leave a lot of salary. If they're hand building, like, who are you going to take? Are you going to take Priest or are you going to take Ware, right? If you're looking in this range. So they're going to go with Priest because he's 8,400. So I think you're going to be able to get, we're starting to get in a range. I think if you can catch where I'm going with this, where we want to be over the market on just about all of these guys.
Yep, without a doubt, being over the market will be key, especially if you're doing a bunch of lineups. And if you're doing a single entry and stuff, I mean, I think I'd even go as far if I was just doing one lineup, wanting to have a good time, not playing a ton of NASCAR DFS before, right? You would want to play, I would say, even like 5 guys from 25th and back, or 21st and back here, and maybe even 6.
Absolutely.
You could definitely have all 6 in your lineup that way. That's the way I usually approach these super speedways. That's the way I approach. I think I had 30th and back in the race yesterday as well, I think. So it's like kind of, a lot of ways you can, slice a cake, but at the end of the day, whatever you feel like is the best will definitely be the route. Personally, for me, I think I will be sticking back here for all my single entry stuff. I don't think I'll branch inside the top 20 at all. Tony, what are you doing with these 20th through 30th guys here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way to put the condom on and min cash for sure. Like, just jam them all in the back. Yesterday, I was pounding the drive, and it worked out. So this isn't results oriented, because I was saying it in chat too, but I thought Jesse Love would be in the winner, or I said Austin Hill earlier in the day till VIP said that at the end, and then he did, just because I do think like it's the safe way to play everyone back, but I definitely think there's at least someone towards the front that ends up. But the hard part is, like you guys keep saying, you don't know who it's going to be. There's going to be a lot of crashes, and you want to give yourself as many outs as you can. So I'm not even disagreeing with what you said. I just really want to force in at least one guy up front. Like, I can't go 6 back. I can't let myself put all 6 back in there, but I get it totally. And like Stats said, if we could know all the ownerships right here, I would just literally go above every single one of them, at least a little above, because really all the way back, once you get to, I mean, honestly, like Stats said, 21 with Kyle Busch, like all the way back to 41. I know that's literally every driver, but if you guaranteed me the ownerships, I would go above on all of them, and then go a little bit below on all the guys in the first 20 and just take my chances and run it. But we don't obviously get those numbers. But some of the guys in the 20s that I made fun of you about SVG, but I like him too. And more than anything, it's the starting position, which is a little further back than some of those guys that we talked about. And 10%, if he's actually only 10%, that's a luxury, because we can play 15 to 20%, like Stats said, and be decent amount ahead of the field. And Priest right there with him. I love Priest too. The good part about having so many good drivers towards the back is there really can't be, outside of Keselowski in the next range, maybe like Truex Bowman, some of those guys will be closer to 50%. But all these guys in this range, the 20s, is going to be 5 to 15, 20% mainly. I'm sure Busch and Larson will get higher than that, but you get the point. A lot of guys are going to be similarly owned, where it's not that hard to go above the field, and that's what I want to do. SVG, Priest, Barry. I even like Barry a decent amount, 29th. Some of it's hard to distinguish. That's why this is more of a 20 max, 150 max race for me. Just because some weeks I could play one entry. Even last year, a couple of those races, we had members win a lot of money with one entry. Daytona, not as much of a one entry type thing for me, just because I wanna spread out a lot of these guys and take my chances.
I'll say this, right? It's like playing a lottery, but the lottery has a little bit of edge, right? Like 10% of these lineups are kind of dead off the rip. So if you're buying a lottery ticket and you want to have a good time, you do get a little bit of edge.
You're playing Keno. How many numbers is Keno?
I don't know. I'm not old.
Keno, you play as many as you want.
But how many like numbers can you? Is it all the numbers? 99?
Yeah, I don't know. Is it like 80? I could give you a fucking good Keno story though, but we'll save it for another time.
All right, I'm gonna hold you to that.
Yeah.
Next NASCAR show, we get that Keno story. That would be good. Chris Myers, you ask. Obviously, you're in the Discord and stuff. You ask, what is the best fill method? How does Saber know it's a 3 max versus a 20 max? Great question. I use Saber all the time for this. One thing that you'll notice, right when I hit this run contest sim button here, and you might not have that contest sim or whatever, but Saber Sim does know what contest it's going to. I guarantee it, right? When you see it here, it's going through 0 out of these 14 contest sims that it's simming right now. And you can see when I do an autofill, I think it would be the same thing without the contest sims as well. It'll tell you what source, basically it's in build 1 right now, but also when it saves. And it does tell if it's, inside a 3 entry max or a 20 entry max. It is very good at deciphering that. And it's something that I haven't had a lot of use for it on NASCAR, though. So it's one thing that I just kind of want to temper my expectation just a little bit. They put so much effort into their product. I'm sure it's going to be great for NASCAR, but it's something that I don't want to just talk out my ass here. I used it for the Clash. The Clash went fine. But you'll see how these are each saving individually as well. So it's not just like lumping one in like direct fill would. It is going through each contest and auto filling in that way. But I assume it will be good for NASCAR as well because basically Saber Sim has just been blowing everyone away with how good it's been. It's going to be great for baseball. It's been great for NBA, and it'll be great for all these other sports as well. I might even fiddle with if NHL is playing this week, if they're not in the same break as the NBA. I think I'll definitely hit the NHL streets this week if we have games, so it should be fun. All right, RPS 15% off your first purchase here at Run for Your Sports as well. Get access to all these tools and everything around it. The last section we will go over 31 through 41, and you'll notice, why is Helio not in here? Not sure why. SaberSim will get that fixed here very shortly, I imagine. He is starting 41st, and that'll be an interesting play here. So stats, I'm going to go to you here. Look, long story short, we're going to love almost every one of these guys in this range, right? I want you to go over your top 5 favorite, and I also want your take on Helio as well, because he is someone where I'm just kind of unsure about starting 41st. He's going to be a fine click. Don't get me wrong, right? He's going to be a fine click. Anyone starting in the back is going to be fine, but it's something that I don't think I have enough conviction for single entry or 3 entry max. What are you doing with this range?
Yeah, so I mean, Stenhouse, I think we've seen a few comments already like, oh, one thing that's guaranteed is Stenhouse will wreck. Well, he's either going to wreck or win. Like that's kind of Ricky Stenhouse at these things. So yeah, he very well may wreck. I'm forgetting now. I was there live. I was at Daytona with JBC a few years ago, and I forget I think that was when did he win it and cost me? Yeah, I think it was when he won it and cost us the Miller. We had it with a lap to go, so that's the way it goes with Daytona. $1 million with a lap to go, nothing after that. But yeah, so Stenhouse, does he have a high propensity to wreck? Absolutely. He's completed fewer laps than quite a few of the drivers in this race. But when he's on, and he has the potential to win. So I think we can take advantage of that as well. T talked about wanting to get over on as many of these guys as you can. There'll be some ownership for sure on Stenhouse with this start position, but I think you want to go even higher than that. Another guy who's had some wreck issues, Keselowski, is another guy who's really good on a good team at these super speedways, restricted plate racing. Had a second place at Talladega in most recently. I think he had a couple of second places at Talladega, so he could definitely run in these type of races. He's going to be high owned, going to be one of the highest owned guys, one of the highest owned drivers here, where he starts at 34th. Do we want to go crazy on? I think this is where we start to get, where T was talking about being over on all these guys. This is where I think we want to we don't necessarily want to get too far over. Someone asked earlier in the chat, do we want to max it at 50%? I try not to do that. I try to run it with my rules and kind of see where it goes, and then I kind of go from there. If I was getting 60% Keselowski, absolutely not. So I think if you stick to that 35 to 40%, and if the market is going to be a little higher than that, I'm okay with actually being under on some of these guys, especially at these tracks, because so many things can happen. Do you feel comfortable being 50% Keselowski when he's 40%? And you say, all right, well, I've got a guy, obviously he's got a ton of upside on place differential, but how comfortable do I feel with the high propensity of being able to wreck? So I think conservative. I think if you get under some of these guys who are going to be in the 40 plus range, Bowman's going to be another one of those guys down here who's probably going to be up in that 40 plus area. You've got Suarez should be 30 plus. If you're close to the market but a little bit under and then over the market in other areas like we talked about in some of that in the prior groups, that's going to make up for it, because if you're under on one driver or in any of the DFS, but you're over on another one, it's really the combination of like, what's the total combination? Like how many, if we talked about in the like if you have SVG and he winds up being in the nuts, right? And you are 15% of him, but you're 35% of Keselowski and he's 45% in the market or something like that. And they wind up being in the winning combination. Well, because you had SVG, you kind of balance that out. I'm trying to say it as easily as I possibly can without confusing myself. So I don't mind getting under at Daytona some of these higher owned drivers like a Keselowski, like a Bowman in this range, maybe even a Suarez. You've got Justin Haley's going to be fairly owned, Zane Smith, just because of their starting position. So I think the lower owned guys at this level, now that gets you into Jimmy Johnson and Castro Neves. Look, I don't love either one of these guys. Let's start with Helio. I know you touched on, you want to kind of get my opinion on it. I think, we talk about the randomness at Daytona, but there's also an experience factor here as well. Real difficult for rookie drivers, difficult for first-time guys to perform well because it is a different type of racing. And this is a guy coming from a different world of racing altogether. Do I expect a strong finish? No. But starting 41st, he's a cash game play, I think, for sure, when you start 41st. And you do have to sprinkle him in here. I think he's going to wind up being 10 to 15, maybe a little higher owned. So if I'm in that 10 to 15 range on Castro Neves, I'm fine. I think the same thing holds true for Jimmy Johnson. Total opposite here. All the experience in the world, but just has not looked good, has not given us any reason to back him. But at Daytona, it's a lottery ticket. And with his experience, can he avoid a bunch of wrecks and all of a sudden find his way into like 11th, 12th, 13th? He finishes 13th. He's probably in the winner. So can that happen? Absolutely. So I think you're going to want to be in the 10 to 15% on both of those guys.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I just mentioned, for single entry, I'm going to be stacking the back and stuff. But I don't think for single entry, I'm going to have Helio or Jimmy Johnson. I'm going to hope that they kind of get a little bit more ownership than you'd expect. I think, like you said, 10, 20% is probably a good number. I think Helio would probably be about 15 to 18 because that seems to be the trend. A lot of people are figuring out just jamming the guys in the back works out. And then Jimmy Johnson, I actually think he'll get north of 20%, despite not giving us any reason to believe that he'll actually be good here. I know that he was just keeping the car clean in the duels as well, but it's also like every time he kind of gets into the car nowadays, it's like you're expecting a wreck. I mean, it's just the new gen car is something that you're kind of I don't really associate Jimmy Johnson being that great in this car here right now. Obviously, he's a legend and stuff, but it's one of those things for single entry and stuff. I don't think I'll be playing 40 or 41. Tony, who's your favorites from this range?
I was running my numbers. Well, I agree with a lot of the stuff you're saying. One way that I think I build differently than stats for sure, just over the last year, where just seeing our tags, us three put our tags up every race last year, all three trucks, Xfinity. The one thing I definitely do different is I like to pick one guy that's super chalky and just shove them. And it's just, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just the way I like to do it. And Keselowski's just that guy where I just have to take my chances and just go above. But what that means is I'm going to naturally be lower on the other couple, like really, really chalky guys. So I'd rather go under on like Stenhouse and Bowman. And that still means I'm getting a lot. I want to be clear. Like, so Bowman, if he's going to be 40%, I get 30% or something. And if Stenhouse is going to be 30, I get 20 or 25. But Kez, if he's in the 40s, I want like 70 is like one of the ways, just so that I always like to have one guy that's kind of I feel good about. First of all, I think I always like Keselowski, so that's a clarification too. And when he's starting from the back, I can't help myself but just to shove him in there, starting 34th. So I do think there's tons of ways you can do it, and I don't even disagree with what Stats was saying, because his way is probably the better way for playing 150. He's definitely better at that than me, but Kez is definitely my guy there. I agree with a lot that Rubio said with Jimmy and whatever the other dude's name is. How you say it? Helio? How you say it? Helio? But there is something to be said starting 41st and 40th where if 10 to 15 guys get knocked out and they're just up to 28th, you won't be optimal if that happens. But, I mean, you're already building with a condom, Rubio. You might as well get a little extra of these guys back here. And when they finish 24th, they got a nice score back there. So
that's where we rip the condom off, Tony. I'm not jamming
that's the turning point with the 41st and 40th driver.
That's what I'm done. You know,
is this the first time? Is this 40? I think 41 for the first time.
Yeah,
it broke Sabre. I can't even get it to put 41 for the homeboy's number.
That'll fix shortly. I imagine.
Well,
yeah, it has to.
Yeah. So, but the rest of this range, I mean, I want a little of those guys. Like I said, I want to be. Truex is the one I just never like. So I always like Kaz, and except for whatever he's good on. What's he good on? The flat tracks or whatever one he's good at. Truex. But I don't like him that much here. He'd be the one that I feel like I should go lower on just because he's as high. Bowman, I don't know about these guys. But the guys I want to get over on actually in this range are the Gregsons, the Hakavars, the Haleys, the Suarez is going to be chalky, but I want to be over on a lot of these guys. So all these guys are good plays. You just have to pick and choose, especially if you're not playing 150. Like if you're playing 3 teams, 10 teams, 20 teams, I think you got to just pick a few of these guys and go overweight and go under on it's easier if you play 150 like we're doing today, where you can get closer to the numbers, maybe a little ahead, maybe a little low. But if you're only playing a couple teams, you got to just pick a few. Go in on them, fade the other ones, take your chances. Because if you try to just fill every single category with 3 teams, you're just not giving yourself enough out. So I think you pick a few guys, jam them in there, and then sprinkle the rest around it, honestly.
Yes, absolutely. I'm looking at the career results of Jimmy Johnson. So he didn't finish any better than 20.
You always hate freaking Jimmy's going to shove it up you today.
That's the worst part, Tony. Is I love building my lineups and stuff like that. He has not done well at all here at Daytona in the 500.
He is kicking your ass today.
He did get 9th in 2019, but you look at. I know this is a new gen, so I don't want to just completely.
He's starting 40th.
He sucks. He's washed.
Jimmy Johnson, he's starting 40th.
You're jamming Michael Jordan at chalk when he was.
If he's starting 40th, I'll jam Jordan in there.
I don't know. I'm gonna need another Red Bull. I'm probably gonna need a Wendy's breakfast in me. Oh shit, it's 10:40.
Especially when you're playing, like you don't have to go crazy. I do think he's gonna be higher owned than. I think he'll be at least like close to 20. So play 10%.
He's going to be high on Tony. Quit that. He's going to be 25 or 30% on.
Oh, yeah, it could be because everyone just pushes these guys in the back. You know what I love about NASCAR is Truex is retired. Race 1. Truex is racing. So I mean that's totally NASCAR right there.
It was funny looking up and seeing Briscoe into the 19 and stuff, and you're just like, wait, is that Truex, right? Like, it's just one of those things. It's going to be weird seeing Truex out there with the 19 out there as well. This is a good question, or not good question, a good point by Chris Myers. I don't think I would do this either, playing 39 through 41. That's very chalky, and I don't love that idea either. It's not something that I really expect to do, and something that I wouldn't really recommend doing either, because a lot of that ownership kind of just formed together, like Truex, Johnson, and Helio. A lot of normies would do that, right? They would just jam that, 39, 40, and 41.
A lot of normies going around the oval.
Yeah, a lot of normies going around the oval. That's how you do it. Let's go ahead and give our picks to win stats. If you got any of the betting takes here, I know you liked Reddick earlier. Anyone else that you're on for this one here?
Yes, I think in the mark, Reddick, I think is a long shot. As I mentioned, I really like. The other 2 guys I would take here at decent prices. I think I like Chase Elliott. I think I mentioned that earlier with Hendricks here. I think, look, Elliott has proven himself to be pretty good on these type of tracks. So I don't mind Chase, not necessarily as good a play for DFS, but I like him in the betting markets. And then the defending champion, who we didn't really talk about all that much, William Byron, I like that price as well. So those are my 2 bets here or 3 bets with Reddick for today.
All right, I love it. I love it. And real quick, I forgot to give my take here, but Justin Haley was the only guy who I think would be that we didn't really talk about. 6,600 starting 35th. He is one guy that I will be definitely over the market on. Just real quick, I wanted to get that out there. He was my big stand. I'm probably going to have like 40% up. So you got Byron Reddick, and who's the third one here? Stats.
Chase Elliott.
Chase Elliott. Perfect. So Reddick, Elliott, and Byron from stats there as the betting market moves. Tony, who's your pick to win?
I got to go with my boy Kaz. I know it's chalky. Should I pick a low-end guy too?
Hey, he's 14 to 1.
I know, but I like him. He's my pick, but I like Gregson's my sneaky one. So Kaz and Gregson.
So with that top 10 boost, that is definitely not plus EV. You think, we should parlay these guys together, a little Gregson.
I'm not sure any of those boosts are plus EV with the way Daytona. I'm going to do it though.
It's not even the way Daytona is. Like any track, these odds are criminal. I'm going to say it. These odds, there should not be.
I'm a sucker for those boosts too, because like my max is always like $25, so it's just so easy just to do it and put the 25 bones in on it.
That's the thing is like I'm staring at a Hocevar, Haley, and like Gregson, top 10 finish here. Hope it really gets chaotic, and also
jam it in there
into 2K. And it's like, is it really smart to do?
I mean, are any of them? It's a matter of having some fun, Mr. Condom.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. Gregson's the top 10 pick. Obviously a long shot winner here. Stats, give me a top 10 pick to add into this parlay. We'll do one driver from each of us.
You want a top 10 long shot here?
Just top 10. And if you name a guy too, I can give you the odds if you don't want to look it up on DK.
Yeah, no, man, I'm not staring at it, but let's go. Did you put your boy SVG in there?
I did not. I would be happy to.
Put him in there, man.
All right, so now we got the mega long
spark wood when you said SVG. He sparked.
I did spark. All right. I'm going to throw in Justin Haley. We're going to hope things get a little bit chaotic. I think Haley has the talent at these super speedways to do it as well. Top 10 finishes only, right? Gregson, Haley, and SVG. The boost gets us up to plus 4,800.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so I actually really like that. I'm going to throw 25 bones on it, and it would win 1.2K if we hit. So if that hits, here's what we'll do. We'll give away a 333 ticket on the next show if that hits. So
we got some new hats coming too. I want to give some hats away next week on the NASCAR show.
Oh, perfect. So new hats coming out as well. So this would be good here. And Corey Holt, you asked, would you max those three, Brad Bowman and Truex, maybe like 1 of 3 or 2 of 3? I think you can go 3 of 3, but it goes
to the rules I think are crazy to put in. Yeah. Like you're just limiting yourself from some of the best plays. Like just let it naturally happen.
So that's a thing too, where it's like, Tony, you mentioned it that you want at least like one guy in between like 11 and 20. Yeah. Well, that's how you're getting different on this slate anyway, is by having one of those guys that you don't need to make a rule where you're not getting.
Why would you limit a rule with like the best drivers? Like I don't agree. Maybe Stats has a better answer, but I don't see why you would do that.
Yeah, Stats.
I wouldn't. This would be the only time I would actually consider it, just because of the randomness of this race. Okay. Typically in NASCAR, never. I actually move a little bit closer to what you do, depending on like sometimes we're going to see some of these races like 60 to 70% ownership on
some of them with no cartage. You have to just shove them in.
You have to shove, right? Here, I could get behind getting a little crazier with with the rules, but I agree. I'm not using that rule, so I can't advocate for it, but I can understand the logic behind it. One thing we didn't do is the sub 20%. Who's going to hit the nuts?
That's right.
Sub 20% owned.
We have to do that.
I shut my stuff. Can you enlarge it a little bit?
Yeah, I can enlarge it. Just give me a
hold
second.
on. Just say SVG. That'll get it enlarged.
It's a little cold in here. Hold on. Let me enlarge it. There we go. Should be good.
If you would just get rid of the right side with all your lineup things on it, it would be a perfect screen.
I kind of forgot that was even up there. All right, come on, give me a break.
My own. There we go.
Look at that. All right, there you go. You asked me the driver. I'll find it. Stats, you go first.
Hit enlarge one more time.
Well, I went through all that, and I'm just going to take one of the guys that I took to win. And so I'll take Chase Elliott starting 17th. He's 18%. I'll say he hits the nuts.
I like it. Tony, sub 20%.
I mean, no, I freaking love those plays there. That's why I put that rule in, like Elliott, Blaney. I know they're close to 20, but for this, I'll say Priest. I think Priest and Custer, honestly, but I'll say Priest.
Yeah, I like Priest as well. Yeah, 27th. I think he'll hit that 20%. I think he'll be right under it. I think that's a That's a good call there too. I might as well just stick to the brand now, right? I just go Shane Van
Get it
Gisbergen.
in there.
Yeah, just jam in SVG, right?
I
Listen,
thought
when
of
he
one
went-
rule too while you were doing this, just because it's one thing I like to do, and I didn't think of it until you sorted. But one thing you can do is sort by some of these lower owned guys you like, and literally just do a rule that says I want 2 of these guys, like whoever you like in the low owned range. Just click them into your group, and then you got a random group to randomize you even more.
Yep.
I mean, you'll probably get it anyways. Again, like Stats said early in the show, I'm probably overdoing it with my rules, but it makes me feel better knowing that I'm narrowing it down in certain directions and stuff. Even if it just makes me feel better, I like that.
Yeah, as long as it makes you feel good, right? That's all that matters in this world, right? You know, make sure you enlarge it and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yep.
So real quick, Chris, you mentioned look at the truck. I don't think 3 guys 30M back hit the optimal in the Xfinity race. I think 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 6 scorers were 30th and back, and D Benedetto and Gase were 7 and 8 there as well. So I think for the trucks, though, you are right. Not a lot.
We
of
knew
guys.
that, but we kind of knew that going in with Xfinity. I mean, you had guys in the top
Yeah.
10 that were 40% owned, right? So this
And
wasn't
the trucks,
unknown.
we got unlucky though, because they didn't really crash that much at the end. Like it got clean towards the end.
My guys crashed. Hell, my guys didn't even start the race. And Chris was in the chat even alerting people saying Mosak is not starting on the race. I'm sitting there at freaking Top Golf, you know, sitting there having a good time, and my day gets ruined when I look at my phone. And
You got to
see
play
Mosak.
guys that actually start the race, Gregory.
I know. I got to keep a close eye. We don't have any worries with that with Cup. Again, thank y'all for joining us here. We know from Big T who was late, but hey, he got the job done, right? You know, he said I threw him under the bus, but he was the first one to get his content up. Props to him. You know, he cleaned up the playbook. He did a great job. I bet he's gonna be doing a double duty. I think he's gonna be doing some All-Star game stuff as well.
As long as I get freaking credit. I didn't get any credit, and I wasn't happy about it. I like to get credit for my grind. I had to clean up all Mangone shit, and I didn't even get credit.
Yeah, I think you only get credit from me if you ship the 50K tonight. You know,
I hope I get credit then. I'll take that over
as well. Who giving out some bets there. Byron, Elliott, and Reddick were some of his favorites in the betting market DFS side. Appreciate y'all for joining us. RPS 15% off your first purchase here at Run for Your Sports. Everyone have a great time and good luck today at the Daytona 500.